Zion. Welcome, new folks who just joined us and new folks here. They can see you waving because the way we have it set up. Wave.
Hey.
You guys can wave
Hi.
back. Awesome. Awesome. Okay. So we're only a little bit behind, but not too bad. Great. There are, let's see the prayer book. Yeah, the Torahs. Yeah, and they'll be on the screen too, but
All right.
also pass those, the big ones around. Ki mitzion teitze Torah udvar Adonai merushalayim. Ki mitzion teitze Torah udvar Adonai merushalayim. Baruch shenatan Torah le'amo Yisrael b'kedushato. Baruch shenatan Torah le'amo Yisrael b'kedushato. Baruch hu et Adonai hamavorach. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu im kol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Amen. Okay, so now we will read from this week's Torah parsha. We'll read some of it, and then we'll also go into reading some of Ecclesiastes or Kohelet. We need the other ones first.
The other one's first.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you. So we're in Exodus. I'm sorry. Got your head. Good. Now you can see better. We go back to the book of Exodus because it's a holiday. So we're in the book of Exodus, and what chapter are we in? What chapter and verse, Austin?
I believe it's 33:12,
Great, thank you.
according to Sepharia.
Well, we'll go with Sepharia. I'm gonna trust Sepharia.
Okay. Uh-oh.
Did folks need help finding it?
So where are we? Exodus.
Oh, I'm in Genesis. I'm like, that is not the right
Page
person.
315.
Well, it's gonna be different for people.
Oh.
It's a great idea, but everyone has a different book. And do we need to get some more? Are you guys okay sharing?
We're okay.
Okay,
Oh, this isn't listed by. But I think we're in Exodus.
we're in Exodus, Exodus 33:12.
Okay, thank you.
It's also on the
Okay.
screen, but we're gonna start with Exodus. Yeah. You got it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
You guys have it?
not yet. Working
Want
on
me to help you?
it. Exodus 33:12. I'm getting there.
Great. Need help, Debbie?
Yes.
Here.
I don't know where this is.
Hand it over.
Okay.
Yeah.
CPS.
Numbers, Leviticus,
187?
Exodus.
Well, I think you could start from the same.
Okay.
Okay.
33, 32. Oh, I skipped it.
Hmm.
33:12. Here you go. Okay. So for those who are new, what we do is we read it and then I interrupt and we have discussion and questions. It's a Torah study. So that's what we'll do. So we'll read this parsha. There's some interesting things. Yeah, you can move back if you
Yeah,
want or turn
interesting.
around, whatever.
Tough because the sun.
Yep,
is behind
Moses
us,
said.
I'm in the wrong spot.
Do you want a hat?
I will figure it out.
Okay. Great. Okay. So does somebody want to unmute and read, or somebody here want to read?
Is it 33 then the Lord said to Moses?
Line 12. Moses said to Hashem, beginning with line 12.
Oh, okay. Got it. All right, I'll read.
Okay, just read loud.
Moses said to Hashem, see, you say to me, lead this people forward, but you have not made known to me whom you will send with me. Further, you have said, I have singled you out by name, and you have indeed gained my favor. Now, if I have truly gained your favor, pray let me know your ways, that I may know you and continue in your favor. Consider too that this nation is your people. And Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh said, I will go in the lead, right? I will go in the lead and will lighten your burden. And he said to Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, unless you go in the lead, do not make us leave this place. For how shall it be known that your people have gained your favor unless you go with us, so that we may be distinguished, your people and I, from every people on the face of the earth?
Okay, let's pause there for a moment.
Yeah.
Right. So what's happening here is Moses is now like pleading again to God and saying, how do I know that I can trust you? Right. There's still like this debate with God, like, and this is after the shattering of the first books. Yeah, the first, what are they called? Rock stones that had the tablets. Thank you. That's the word I couldn't access. So Moses is saying, how can I trust you? And God's saying, I will show you how you can trust me. I'm going to go with you. I'm going to be this cloud, this light for you that you will find, and I will be with you, and I will provide comfort and rest. And then now Moses, this is really interesting, right? Like Moses says, okay, I found favor in your eyes, but how are you going to make us distinct from every people on earth? And to me, this is interesting, right? Because we can understand this in lots of different ways, what this distinction means, right? It's become this like supremacy distinction, right? But when we think of the word distinct, hello, welcome. When we think of the word distinct, it can mean different things. It doesn't have to mean like we are the supreme people, right? So I invite you to share and unmute if you want online, or talk here about how we might reframe, because this is going to be taken right by a lot of religious Jews as, see, we're distinct, we're so special. But how else might we understand this? What else might we think about when we talk about being a distinct people?
I would think as carrying culture.
Carrying culture. Beautiful.
I just remember somebody telling me once that every people thinks of themselves as distinct in some way.
Right. Yeah. It's like being a child, right? I want to be the special.
This is partly like how there's so many names for God in Torah, and how there's like Elohim is plural. So there's like this acknowledgement that there's many peoples with many gods. But like Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh is our God, and like we have a religion and other people have a religion. For some reason, like Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh wants us to do their stuff, and then other gods want us to do their stuff, and we all bring the gift to like the world together.
Beautiful.
Not dissimilar to that. I was
Similar
thinking
to what
also
you
about
said.
the history of coming, like the fact that we're coming out of Egypt, right? And you're looking for something to bring together that is in the past. That is the future.
Beautiful. Folks online, anyone to share? Neil.
Well, the word distinct, depending on your developmental level, can mean a variety of things. From a place of spiritual sobriety, one possible interpretation is distinct means that one is embracing their collective cultural and historical experiences, and in response to that, to paraphrase Rabbi Heschel, taking pathos and transforming it into compassionate engagement.
Beautiful. Yeah. Anyone else? No? Okay. All right, let's keep going.
All right, I'll keep reading.
Yep, thank you.
And the Lord said to Moses, I will also do this thing that you have asked, for you have truly gained my favor, and I have singled you out by name. And he said, oh, let me behold your presence. And he said, I will make all my goodness pass before you, and I will proclaim before you the name Lord, Yud He Vav He, and the grace that I grant and the compassion that I show. But Yud He Vav He said, you cannot see my face, for mankind may not see me and live. That's important. And the Lord
Say
said,
more.
huh?
Say more. Yes.
You may not see me and live.
Yeah. So you said that's important. So say more about why you
Well,
think that's
just
important.
historically that, maybe it's not historical in this Bible, but I mean, where we're at in Exodus, but, the two sons of Aaron basically saw God and died. And there's something about, I don't know, I guess reaching beyond our capabilities to understand the wholeness of everything that takes us beyond this life.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Other thoughts about that?
And that's one I have never understood.
Yeah, that you can't see God and live.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you were talking, it made me think of people who've had like near-death experiences and they've seen the other world, if you will, or seen something, and they come back and tell and they live. But, you know,
But they couldn't have seen it completely.
right, there's something that they missed, right?
So can I
Thank
steal
God.
from Tolkien here? There's a whole part where they talk about how.
Talk a little louder because
Okay.
they're picking it
So
up
there
there.
are people, so in Tolkien, they talk about in that world that humans aren't built to bear that much joy, actually. And that our joy is for after we have passed, because this form cannot hold that energy that well. And so to even approach, you know, sort of, he puts it in almost allegorical terms, that when you approach this land, some can hold it, but that's because their home is being alive now on the earth. And but that's for the elves, right? And that we as humans, you know, our home is further on, and we will be in sort of bodies or without bodies that can actually hold that much joy and connection and energy. That's Tolkien. Yeah, yeah. That's
Nice.
which I think is actually very beautiful and interesting. Like, you know, like the Energizer Bunny. I think it's brilliant.
And Tolkien, he really studied the Bible a lot, the Old Testament. Yeah,
Right,
it's
right.
one of his main sources,
And
information.
a major linguist, like a huge linguist. So yeah, very understanding.
Okay, I'll keep reading.
Okay, great. And loud. Make sure when you're talking here that you're talking in your outdoor voice.
Okay.
As you say to kids, use your indoor voice, use your outdoor voice, because the mic is over here and I want to make sure it's being picked up. Austin, let us know if it's not being picked up, okay? Thanks.
And the Lord said, see, there is a place near me. Station yourself on the rock, and as my presence passes by, I will put you in a cleft of the rock and shield you with my hand until I have passed by. And then I will take my hand away, and you will see my back, but my face must not be seen.
Okay, I'm going to pause here. So let's picture this for a moment, right? Moses is in the cleft of a rock, and God's going to pass before Moses. Just get this scene for a moment, right? Like this is like a total trip, right?
Yeah.
Like some type of psychedelic trip. Moses is in the cleft of a rock, and some type of divine energy is going to pass before Moses. Now, Moses has already seen the divine in the burning bush, right? So Moses has this incredible capacity to access things that I think all of us at some point in our life, particularly as kids, access, but then we get it beaten out of us. But Moses held on to it. And so Moses is in this cleft of the rock, and the divine's passing in front of Moses, the back of the divine. So one of the things that we can think about when we think about this is as we look at the world, you don't get to see the divine's face, but you get to see what the world looks like over the divine shoulder. So it's as if you can get a glimpse of the divine vision of the world. Because what you're really looking at is not the back of the divine, but the vision that the divine offers us of the world. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
That's
It does. The other,
So that's another way to think about, like, it's not so important to see the divine itself, but to see the manifestation of the divine and the way that the divine can see the world and
Well,
in its wholeness and beauty.
yeah, I was also thinking about we can see the deeds that are done, but not the mind of them, not the forward vision.
Yeah.
To be one with them. To be one, just separate.
Yeah.
It's interesting, the language. I don't know
Also
the Hebrew,
flirtatious.
but he says, it says, I will place you in a crevice in the mountain. It's different than like Moses was there and then he had this experience where God spoke to him or he
Right.
heard the divine. But it's the power of creation said, I will put you there.
Yeah.
And this is what it's all sort of what is the word? I don't want to say manufacture, but it's
Orchestrated.
orchestrated. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very orchestrated.
Yeah.
Yes.
That Moshe would have this experience.
Like
Yeah.
I said, I think
Yeah.
it's flirtatious too.
Ah.
Right? Like there's a.
Anyone
See more about it in flirtatious.
talk loud?
So there's a you will see me and you'll see me as I have chosen to be seen, and this we have a date kind of thing, and you're going to view me in this moment in this light, and there is an element of that I think is also part of an ongoing courtship, maybe call it, between us.
Mhm. Anyone online have any thoughts? Yep, Neil.
What came to
You muted yourself again.
What came to mind was this was not just an abstract promise, but it had a particularity. The paradox of no one can see the fullness of God consciousness and live, but simultaneously you will see my qualities manifested in this world. Well, later on, our Kabbalists had developed the counting of the Yomar, which is 49 days of taking the lower face of the Kabbalistic tree, and indeed on each day looking at specific divine qualities, both their inner intention and their outer manifestation. Clearest example of that would be if you were the parent of a toddler and the toddler ran out into the street, your inner intention would be protection, and your outer manifestation is if you need be, you're going to tackle this child to keep it safe.
Mhm. Thank you. Stephanie, did you want to say something? You just unmuted.
Oh, well, I wanted to say I can't hear anybody.
Okay, so we have to hear anybody here, you mean, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
when I can hear you, but not the people in the room when they're talking. I couldn't hear what Neil was saying. Usually he's very clear, but
Check the volume on your computer to make sure it's up all the way.
it's at the top.
Okay, so
I
we'll,
never change it, so.
okay. You heard Neil, okay, so we'll try to talk louder here, thanks.
Okay, sorry about that.
Okay, thanks for letting us know. Okay,
Can I add something?
yeah, but loud.
Yeah, okay.
As if you're screaming. Pretend you're a teacher.
Shout it from the mountaintop.
Teacher
That's
talking to a
right.
5-year-old, right?
I was gonna add that there's a lot of like big small going on.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
Mhm.
like this interesting, like you'll be distinguished from everybody, and then you'll be stuffed into a crevice.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then Moses is like, but I want to see the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking about Adonai Echad, like that you can't see me and live. Like we can't exist as without boundaries and know that. Like we can't all be in the oneness and be aware that we are alive. So we need to live lives as if we're stuffed in crevices to like see these different aspects, and then we get to see these pieces like someone brought up with the Omer or whatever. And then like when we expand into it's sort of like the Min HaMeitzar as well.
Yeah.
Like we're in the narrows, we're having a struggle, we're having a separateness of existence in order to get the blessing of like seeing things. But then when we like expand into the oneness, we cease to exist from a human perspective, but not from a spiritual perspective.
Beautiful. I know that sometimes when I'm trying to really tap into the oneness, And like when I think about in terms of like, oh, I'm upset with this person or I'm in struggle with this person, and I try to remember we're all part of the one, and then I tap into it, I'm like, but I want to be angry.
Yeah.
You know, like I want to hold on to the ego part of me that feels like it needs that separation or individuality.
Well,
And,
that's like
and so
when-
like the question becomes
yeah.
like, how do I hold on to that while also seeing
Yeah.
the wholeness and oneness, and not feeling like, but my truth or my experience then gets completely eviscerated and wiped out as if it didn't matter or doesn't exist.
But I feel like there's a richness you lose.
Loud.
There's a richness you lose though in only seeing the whole.
Yeah.
There's a way in which you lose some of the details, and I will share something publicly, which I think I've never shared publicly before. I remember being born, I remember being over the body and coming down into it. And my
Oh.
sense at that time was that there wasn't a lot of emotion with that. There was just a sense, I was about as excited as I could be, and it was the equivalent of like Mr. Spock raising one eyebrow. You know, it just wasn't that dramatic. And there is a way in which living in a specific incarnation gives you this depth and corners and understandings that change everything. They give you this amazing flavor. But yes, it's always the both and. You have to hold the oneness and the separation, or else it doesn't.
I got a little confused. First, you said there was a lot of emotion. First, you said you were as excited as you could be, and then you said there wasn't a lot of emotion.
Tongue in cheek. Yeah, yeah,
I was
yeah, yeah.
excited to be born as I could have been outside of a body yet.
But it wasn't such a big
But it
emotion.
wasn't very much. Like, this was the peak experience I had of almost like an emotion. And it was like, oh, this is going to be interesting. And that was about it, you know? And then you come into a body and all of a sudden everything changes. Your emotions are heightened. There is a pedal on the piano, so to speak, right? And you can bring drama and, you know, it's louder and softer.
I'm trying to track all this because a few minutes ago, somebody was saying that we as human beings can't hold that much joy. And
That's me, yes.
But now you're saying it's when we're in human form that we have all the emotions.
That's when we are humans, right? That's when you're outside of the body. Your emotions are directly tied to your physical experience. I don't know any other way to say that.
That I can understand. I think I can follow that, but I'm trying to put that together with your saying that we can't hold that much joy when we're in the human body.
There's a limitation.
There's both and.
Both and.
That's how Riley's holding it, right?
Yeah,
That there's
exactly.
like a limitation to the joy we can experience, and outside the human body, there's also a limitation to the joy that we can experience.
It's a different kind of
Is
joy.
everyone okay with that?
Yeah, but we don't all have to agree with this, right? Like these are just
Yeah,
different
no,
people's
no.
experiences and different people's
Oh,
perspectives.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
we're not
Yeah,
saying
no,
this is the truth. We're just saying people are sharing their perspectives. Yeah.
okay. Well, I mean, I just wondered whether you don't find it frustrating that you can't aspire to see God.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Was
a good question. Yeah.
it was interesting because you were talking about can you hear me online? Sorry,
I can hear you. Yeah. Yeah.
It was interesting. You were talking about the perspective of looking over Yud-Hey Vav-Hey's shoulder,
Yeah.
and then Riley was talking about being born, and it's all these perspectives. But in the text, it kind of said, you know, God, or you know, it was saying, I will remove the protective forces. I'll remove my protection, and you'll be able to see for a moment. So when you talk about perspective in the way it was written in the English translation, anyway, it's the divine is never not there. It's never whether you're looking from the crevice, whether you see directly and don't exist, like our own sons or whatever. It's never not there, and it's just whether you're being born was a very. I mean, that was a a wild vision, but it's that divine energy and what we are as humans or whatever form of life, like it's all just there. It's never not there. And then there's these different things that happen or different rituals or things that we strive for, and then you get these glimpses of what actually is always there.
Right.
And it doesn't have a beginning and an ending.
Yeah.
So,
But you have to accept this limitation, and I'm not sure that I want to.
Yeah. Well, so
I mean,
I don't think that we're saying you have to accept it. I think we're saying
okay.
let's experience a limitation.
Well, I just wanted
Certainly,
to
the-
interject that because, yeah, I mean, there are religious experiences in which people feel that they see the divine or, you know, are with God or become part of God or anyway, have that experience. And
definitely,
they survive, they come back, you know.
right.
Unfortunately, it's often for us in our generation, it's been a drug-induced experience. So that, you know, I mean, that is the case a lot of times, and not the same as how you would see God if you were in certain meditation practice or, you know, if you see God, if you're able to actually rise to that level without a drug, I mean, then it would be even more substantial.
Nice.
Because
All
it's very hard to hold on to the drug-induced experience, right?
right, to take it back into your life.
Yeah,
Sometimes,
and integrate it
yeah,
without getting on a fantastic ego trip. I mean, some people came back from, yeah, some people, I mean, we're talking my generation here, but you know, people came back from quote unquote seeing God or thinking they thought they did, and they were on a gigantic ego trip after that. So that wasn't exactly, you know, reality
right,
either.
right. Yeah, thank you. Ari, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say there could be a different perspective on the focused or cleft perspective versus the broader out of body perspective, maybe. Or and I would suggest that it's the two kind of infinities from simple arithmetic, between the infinity of between two fixed points of continuing to divide it an infinite number of times, and then the infinity of the number system would be more analogous to the I guess the out of body kind of infinity, and that both could be therefore interpreted as through that lens anyway, interpreted as infinite and not, and one would not be restricted and the other. Well, the suggestion was at one point that both were restricted, so I'm questioning that, I guess.
Nice. I was going to say that some of you have heard me talk about when I say the Shema, I do it 2 times. And the first time I do it with, it doesn't really matter, but the first time I do it with Adonai, and I picture, you know, the Kabbalists talk about God being in this vessel, and God becomes so expansive that the vessel shatters. And really all the shattered pieces are just the whole world, all of us, the whole universe, each of us, the stars, the planets, the whole thing are all those shattered pieces. And when I say Shema Israel the first time, I'm picturing the vessel, and I'm picturing it shattering and all the broken pieces spreading further and further out. And the Shema is like, okay, I see you. We're going to separate, but we're still one. Don't forget. And then, but the universe continues to expand. It's even now it's continuing to expand, right? And so we lose connection because the pieces get so far apart that they're not really far apart, right? If we think about like everything is part of the divine, the air we breathe, the clouds, it's not really that far apart, but we can't see it and we can't feel it and we can't touch it. And then the second time I say it with Shekhinah, and I picture the whole separateness of all of us, of the whole universe, reminding us that we're one and calling us back into our oneness. So I kind of see this as that, like this expansive, like you were talking about, the expansive and the contraction and the separation and the unity. And, you know, if we take a moment here, let's just take a moment and close our eyes and just grab the air, if you will, in front of you. Just feel it, or feel it on your body even. It's not very windy here, but even feel the touching of the clothes to your skin, or take a breath and feel the breath come in. And imagine that all of that is part of those broken vessels of divine source. And what happens when we start to, I mean, what would happen, right? We couldn't really hold on to this meditative experience every moment of our lives, right? Because there's no way to live our lives. But what would happen if periodically throughout a day we could access that? We just took a breath and said to ourselves, the divine is here. And we took a moment to let ourselves feel it or imagine it. And then we open our eyes, and let's open our eyes and look into each other's faces for a minute. Look into each other's faces and realize that every single face we look into is a spark of the divine. And again, like you said, we couldn't live that way. We couldn't hold on to it every moment of every day. But what would happen if we could access it more frequently? How might we choose to create our world, and how might we live?
Yeah, differently.
I would hope so.
And I mean, you know, for ages, people have accessed a divine experience like through ritual or dance, or, you know, there have been ways to do that, even if you can't stay there all day long.
Right. And then the question is, right, like there's that book by Jack Kornfield, like you meditate first the meditation, then the laundry, or forget the exact title, right? But like you meditate,
Yeah.
you have,
and then you do the
yeah,
laundry.
you know, you have your life,
Top
like,
very wise.
yeah,
There's like the story about the monk who like meditates in a cave for like 4 years, and then the Dalai Lama comes and like visits him and tells him to get a life.
yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
right? Like, it's like, how do we, you know, engage in these practices, even the practice of Shabbat, and take it into the week? I mean, that's the point of this practice, of all of this, of living in the Sukkah, is the practice of, oh, look how fragile life is. You know, I slept out here the other night. It was so magical, but I wouldn't have slept out here if it was pouring rain, right? Like, because I have the advantage and beauty of having a home, but there is a fragility in the Sukkah, and that's why we dwell in it, to remind us of the fragility of our lives. And it feels particularly poignant this year to be doing that, as the Israeli government is literally bombing tents, refugee camps in tents where people live. And this is supposed to be a reminder of ourselves as refugees. And so there's this fragility of life.
Pretty hard.
And how do we hold on to that truth while also,
No problem.
live our lives and engage in joy? I mean, this is a time of our joy. This is a season of joy to live in the Sukkah. And so it's very, I think it messes with us, right? Like, how do we, and maybe that's also part of being connection with the divine, is holding the complexity of it all. Just that is a divine source, a divine access that maybe we can touch in those moments when you're holding the complexity of all that exists in our world today. Because it's a lot. Okay, are we ready? Neil, did you want to add something? Or is that an old hand raise?
Are you talking to me? Sorry.
You inspired me, Kat, in what came to mind.
Oh, Neil.
In early Martin Buber's approaches, they were transcendent. He reached incredibly blissful and states of oneness. And from there, he transformed into what he's more famously known for, the cultivation of I-thou relationships, of how to bring the sacred and the truth to all levels of particularity.
Yeah.
Can I add
Okay.
one more thing?
Yeah.
I think what you said is lovely, but I also think the joy is the only thing that feeds us in times like this. It's what allows us to hold all of this heartbreak as well. It makes the space to make it not numb, because if we only feel pain, we stop feeling.
The joy that you're talking about is really why I showed up today, because I don't usually come in person, sometimes online. But I was walking across the street from my house is the university, and for the past year, at University of San Francisco, they've had the the encampment and the protest, and Rabbi Katz gone over there once, to kind of support the students. And so all the main students doing the organizing, some of whom were Palestinian, were put on academic probation or whatever you call it. And so they couldn't come back. And so the encampment is not, anybody who encamps now will be not necessarily kicked out of school, but you can't attend. So it's kind of like,
Yeah.
And so then I walked by there yesterday and they had the sukkah up, for the Jewish students group. I don't know which one it was, right where the encampment was. And so it's they didn't have big Israeli flags or anything. They're just, they're doing the joyous celebration of sukkah and everything that it means. And so you have, at the bottom of the block, you have all these homeless folks who are camping out, who have are camping out under the stars and want some resources, and the location where the encampment was, all the students are not allowed back to say free Palestine and let's look at the truth of what's going on. And then you have the Jewish group, which is being protected by the university security and has a nice sukkah with nice resources. It's really quite a deluxe sukkah, and it's like, and you have the Israeli government bombing the camps at the same time. And it's like,
Right.
but the piece that's the missing is I think for us as Jews is the joy, right? The joy of Sukkot and if we really celebrate that joy for what it really is and not pretend and not put up all kinds of walls to keep everybody out, but we really celebrate for what is, there's no choice but to experience some piece of the divine and the truth of what's actually going on. And it's bittersweet. It's not all,
Beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
At San Francisco State, where I attend, the only sukkah that I've seen erected is the Gaza Solidarity Sukkah. So I hope that can trickle out to USF.
I suspect that is the Gaza Solidarity Sukkah because at UC Berkeley they destroyed the sukkah. They destroyed the student sukkah. So,
but the one that she's talking about SF State,
Yeah.
and USF is a very different.
so you don't think that's the protest students setting up a sukkah?
It
And
would
just
be
say,
pretty
It would
obvious.
It's so sanitized compared to
Yeah.
what was there. There's like, yeah,
Yeah.
no.
yeah,
it's
that's
not.
interesting because at Berkeley, did they destroy the one at
They,
the
they,
San Francisco State?
I haven't seen that. I mean, I just saw it on Thursday as I was walking to class.
Where is it on state?
I'm very new to the campus.
Oh,
So I
okay.
don't know all
In the
it
middle,
was-
right?
It was,
Like,
it was on like the grass.
Okay,
basically,
yeah.
Kind of in the middle of campus, and it said Gaza Solidarity Sukkah, and the people inside were wearing keffiyehs. And I wanted to stop by and give my appreciations, but they were clearly in the middle of like a very intense learning session. So I just
Mhm.
walked by and kind of smiled.
It's an intense group, yeah, at state. But the president of state is very different from the UC.
Well, state partly
Berkeley,
divested
Well,
in
that's
response to their
interesting.
campaign.
Yeah, right. It's a very different deal.
I
And
went
from
to-
USF.
you were-
yeah.
I
And
went
you
to
were going to say something? Okay. All right.
This week.
So let's continue. Wanna
Does
keep-
someone else want to read? 34?
We're in chapter 34.
All right, God said to Moses, carve out 2 tablets for yourself, just like the first ones. I will write on those tablets the same words that were on the first tablets that you broke. Be ready in the morning so that you will be able to climb Mount Sinai in the morning, a ladder.
Yeah, please.
And stand waiting for me on the mountain
Thank you.
peak. No man may climb up with you, and no one else may appear on the entire mountain. Even the cattle and sheep may not graze near the mountain.
Whoa.
Moses carved out 2 stone tablets like the first. He then got up early in the morning and climbed Mount Sinai, as God had commanded him, taking the 2 stone tablets in his hand. God revealed himself in a cloud and stood there with Moses. Moses called out in God's name. God passed by before Moses and proclaimed, God, God, omnipotent, merciful, and kind, slow to anger, with tremendous love and truth, remembers deeds of love for thousands of generations, forgiving sin, rebellion, and error. God does not clear those who do not repent, but keeps in mind the sins of the fathers to their children and grandchildren, to the 3rd and 4th generation.
Okay, I'm going to interject here. Okay, so Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum Be'anu, Erech apayim v'rav hesed ve'emet. Notzer chesed le'alafim. Nosei avon ve'afesha ve'chata ve'nakeh. Okay, so we all know that from High Holidays, right? We chanted it a bunch of times, this beautiful prayer. And what's interesting here is if you can, what line is that? Go up to 6 and 7. Thank you. So you notice we end at Bechata Venake, which is it ends with forgiver of iniquity, willful sin and error, and who cleanses. Okay, but then here it says, but wait a minute, I don't cleanse completely. These wrongs are carried on upon the children and the grandchildren to 3rd and 4th generation. So we kind of wipe that out of our High Holiday liturgy. Right? Like we want to ignore that. But maybe, as I'm reading this and thinking about this, maybe we need to bring that back in as a reminder that, there's work that why doesn't God cleanse it? Because it's on us to cleanse it. And we are certainly, as we're looking at what's happening right now, we're certainly carrying on the sins and the iniquities of our people for 3rd and 4th generations. And now we're imposing such sins and such horrors on other people who might too carry it on for generations.
Where
And
is it
so
that it says that it's on us to do it?
it doesn't say it here,
Okay.
but that is our tradition.
Yeah.
Is that we're supposed to do the work of teshuvah.
Yeah, I
and
thought it
repairing.
was in here and I.
No,
missed it.
no, it's not in here.
Yeah.
But
It
it's
also-
all over our High Holiday liturgy.
For sure.
Yeah. Debbie, yeah,
It also could just be that that's just the way things are,
that
you
too.
know? Because sometimes when it's like, as though God is gonna do this thing to you, it's really just, this is just what happens. When there's something that happens in one generation, it just gets passed down to the further generations. It just is,
Right. And we also know that we can heal it.
yeah.
We can,
Yeah.
we've seen people in future generations not enact on their children what was enacted on them.
Because it's Yud He Vav He, the source of healing and transformation.
Right. Because
Yeah.
there is a source
Yeah.
within us that is
Yeah.
divine spark that
Yeah.
allows us, that calls us and helps us do that work.
So I'm the daughter and granddaughter of Jewish Holocaust survivors, and I've had to do a lot of that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know people in the next generation who are still doing it.
Right. Well, if you look at like a lot of the young folks standing up and on the campuses and elsewhere, a lot of them are grandchildren or children of Holocaust survivors. And they are doing the work. They're doing the generational healing work. And it's so beautiful to
Where-
see.
I'm surprised to see the 3rd and 4th generations. I have in my head that it's seven
That's a Native
generations. Is that a
American.
different-
Native American.
That's Native American. And,
I was-
but
but it's-
and
But I think that in Jewish.
there in Jewish generations, the goodness and the joy is carried on for thousands of generations.
But there's nothing specific to 7 generations.
I don't remember right now about
Okay,
that, but
I know
do-
it's.
it is Native American. Yeah.
But I was thinking that this.
Loud.
I was also thinking that this might be a preventative step too. Remember that what you do now has repercussions for your children and your grandchildren
Yeah,
and your great grandchildren.
Right.
So whatever
Sure.
left behind, compromises not only you, but them.
And I think of that as more general because I don't have children and grandchildren of my own, but it has ripple effects.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Family doesn't really end with blood, right? Or at least maybe direct blood.
Right.
Yeah. Well, in here it says, your children and grandchildren, but it really we are ancestors and we are people that lead on, that impact future generations as we choose to live. Right. So whether my parents have caused me trauma or our culture and society has caused me trauma, it still lives on in me generationally. Yeah. So I think you're right. It's not literally, it says here, children and grandchildren, but it's future generations.
Yeah.
How we choose to live today. We know if we look at the environment, how we've chosen to live is affecting future generations and will continue to do so. So I just wanted to point out that we leave that out and I almost want to figure out a way to bring it back in to remind us. Because it's actually so critical in our high holiday liturgy that we actually engage in teshuvah and that we're aware of the fact that we have to repair. I mean, it's interesting to me now, like it's always been so beautiful that we leave it out. And I'm like, actually, we should bring it back in.
So you have until between now and high holidays of next year to figure out how to.
Right, exactly. I just have to go make a note
Right.
tonight
go
to
make a
just
note,
think
yeah.
think
And
through
figure
it.
out how to put it in the melody.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Beautiful.
Make a note, just note to self. Remember
Like
it, brain.
divine spark.
Remember
Correct.
it, brain. Beautiful. Okay, any other reflections?
I have a reflection, which is that not to like be doing literary criticism of the authors of the Torah.
Go for it.
That's our tradition, yeah.
Well, I think sometimes there's a lot of showing and not, or telling and not showing, and we're supposed to believe that God is compassionate and merciful and all these things, but much of the Torah is actually about God not being compassionate or merciful, and
Right.
especially, frankly, the story of Exodus.
Right.
And wait, I had a thought that's going to come back to me.
Yeah.
I have a cynical view that we appeal to the good parts of God on this holiday. You remember how compassionate you can be. Remember that you can forgive us, and you know that you can forgive people. But really, I think the idea that we're fashioned in this unknowable image of God also includes our capacity for great destruction.
Right.
And that
Right.
you know, the idea that God is love is very Christian. It's not very Jewish. And the idea that that's all that's in God is not what bears out in the showing of God's actions. And so I like to think of this appeal as being kind of specifically to the parts of God that we would like God to enact on us.
Rather than the other.
Yeah, and if you omit parts from the liturgy is very, very bleak and cynical to me. You know, the more Hebrew I learn, the darker I think it is what we do and don't choose to put into our translations that go in our Sidurim.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because the God of Exodus is very vengeful.
Right.
Right.
Well,
I think,
so the
I think
God,
most
so
have
God,
reasons to have questions. honestly.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
So almost as though we're reminding God of that part of God's nature that we want to.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
There's
I was, you know, this is a thing that came up to me during the reading of Jonah on Yom Kippur. Is like, again, we the traditional reading of Jonah ends with this text from Micah talking about the Mikamocha text and like how beautiful and loving God is, and it's like I don't like. God told this guy to go tell people that their stuff was going to be ruined, and then threw him into the sea. And it's almost like we see God's actions, which have a lot of facets that are harmful and creative, and then in our prayers choose to take from the liturgy that which appeals to only the parts of God that we want to see. And I wonder what that does kind of to our visions of ourselves if we believe ourselves to be fashioned in the image of God. We're only seeing the parts we want to see.
Yeah. So, you know, the Torah, of course, is
Right, right.
the Torah, of course, is written by human beings. And so it's a manifestation of both all the complexities of human beings. So you have the vengeful human being speaking through the vengeful God, and you have the loving, expansive human being speaking through the loving, expansive vision of God contained in the Torah. So I think our Torah is filled with a loving God,
Yeah.
and also a vengeful God, because it's filled with the voice of human beings who have both of those. Each of us within us have both at times, right? Like all of us constrict. And I'll speak for myself. I certainly constrict at times and want to like be vengeful. God willing, I overcome it, you know, through my love side. But there's this tension that exists. And the Torah manifests it, I think, in a really beautiful way, actually. And I agree with you that sometimes in the study of Torah, we try to like dismiss or minimize some of the horror in the Torah. And I think when we do that, and it's why I don't do that, but I think when we do that, then we fail to, it makes it easier for us to dismiss the horror that we create in the world. So in the stories of rape and murder and slaughter, if we kind of try to say, well, it didn't really happen, we didn't really mean it, whatever, may or may not have happened. But if we just dismiss it out, then we don't see the rapes and horror that are happening in our world, and we don't have the capacity to name them in our world that we live in. And they're still existing in this world as they did in that world. And so, yeah, I agree. And I think that in our prayers, we try to, maybe our prayers and our liturgy is an attempt to remind us, like in the, in the Jewish renewal prayer, like, we are light, right? We are infinite light and infinite being, and we've messed up, we've screwed up. And I love that, because it is the truth. Please help me remember that I'm good, that I have goodness in me, and have compassion for when I screw up. Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you.
Do you know what what they're drumming?
So there's a couple houses down, and they haven't done it in ages. So it's really interesting. But a couple times I'm like, I'm going to go ask if I can join them. They have a whole drumming party.
So it's not a minion.
It's not. No, it's not. It's definitely
different kind
not.
of minion.
Yeah.
It's Brazilian drumming.
Is it?
It's a cuica. You hear the little squeaky noise. Yeah.
Dog barking on
On-
a roof.
No, it's like a little leather bag inside of a hand drum.
It's
really hard to
beautiful.
play.
One day they were going crazy, and I was just like dancing in the backyard. I was like, I wonder if I could go up. So I found out which house it was, but I haven't had the courage yet to like say, can I come
should
and
all go.
join the
I'm
drumming
guessing that
circle?
they would welcome you with open arms.
Yeah.
My experience with things like that.
Yeah, they might. So maybe later today I'll go ask
And
them.
if they didn't, it's all fine.
That's true. I don't think they'd be angry. That's true. Okay, shall we keep reading?
Okay, who else to read?
Where are we?
It was
I
reading.
think,
Oh, you were reading.
You were, right? You're reading, yeah.
Yeah, you want to keep going?
Sure. No, nothing was read while I was gone.
Nothing was
Okay.
read while you were gone.
Okay. Moses quickly bowed his head and prostrated himself. He said, "If you are indeed pleased with me, O God, let Hashem go among us. This nation may be unbending, but forgive our sins and errors and make us your own." God said, "I will make a covenant before all your people and will do miracles that have never been brought into existence in all the world among any nation. All the people among whom you dwell will see how fearsome are the deeds that I, God, am doing with you. Be very careful with regard to what I am instructing you today. I will drive the Amorites, Canaanites, Hivites, Perizzites, Hittites, and Jebusites out before you. Be most careful not to make a treaty with the people who live in the land where you are coming, since they can be a fatal trap to you. You must shatter their altars, break down their sacred pillars, and cut down their Asherah trees. Do not bow down to any other god, for God is known as one who demands exclusive worship. God demands it. Are we stopping? Okay.
Well, yeah, I
That
mean,
makes me pause.
no, right,
That's a different flavor.
right. These are the two voices,
There we go.
right? These
Yeah.
are the two voices. I'm compassionate and I'm vengeful, and I'm going to wipe these people out.
And I'm jealous.
And I'm jealous. Yeah. So it's a complicated God, because God, the Torah is really God made in our image, right? The
Right.
Torah is a God made in our image, who we think God is and who we think we are and who we want to be and who our limitations are. And yeah. It's a mess. And this is horrible because, the texts like these in this text for religious Jews who believe in this as an actual word of God are going to argue and enact the wiping out of people, right? Come into the land and they wipe out the people, and they think it's no problem because it's in our Torah.
Right.
Gave us the land in the Torah. And so it's but they ignore the parts of the Torah about loving the stranger, and they ignore the parts in the Torah about, we don't own this land, it's God's, and we're just mere sojourners. And they don't do the Jubilee, redistribution of land and wealth, and all these other aspects in the Torah. And so just like us, we could say, they pick and choose those parts that uplift the voice that they are embodying. And we're picking and choosing, uplifting the voices that we want to embody. And, you know, I said on the high holidays that I think that Judaism is really in a crisis right now. Which voice of this Torah, which voice within us and within Judaism is going to prevail? And I really want, in spite of the fact that there's both voices, I really want the voice that has beautiful teachings in it, in the voice of radical transformation of our world to prevail in Judaism, because the traditions that we have that are thousands of years old are beautiful and they're meaningful and they sustain us as a people, and they brought us to this day where, you know, we've been slaughtered throughout history, and yet we still sit in Sukkot. We still pray at high holidays. We still come to Shabbat services. And so I want our tradition to sustain itself, and for the manifestation, the conflation of Judaism and Zionism to be divorced from one another. Because Zionism as a political project of a nation state is not thousands of years old. It's a political project. So, okay. Yeah.
Question in the chat from Jess.
Yeah.
It says, can you say again which thing you were talking about in the last discussion that we leave out in the high holy days, and that we maybe should bring back?
Sure. So in Exodus 34, it begins on line 6. The Adonai El Rachum Vechanun Eref Apayim Verav Chesed Ve'emet Notzer Chesed Le'alafim. So loving kindness for thousands of years. Nosei Avon Vefesha Vechata Venakeh. We end there. So we end with preserver of kindness for thousands of generations, forgiver of iniquity, willful sin and error, and who cleanses. So that's where we end in high holidays. But the text continues, and this is pulled right out of this text, pulled right out of this part of the Torah. But it continues, but does not cleanse completely, recalling the iniquity of parents upon children and grandchildren to the third and fourth generation. So that's the part that we leave out, that I'm suggesting we might want to figure out how to bring back in. Thank you, Jess. So what I would like to do is, the text continues about not observing molten gods, idols, and it tells us to observe Pesach, and it tells us to observe this festival that we're observing. But I'd like to end, because I want to turn to a little bit of Ecclesiastes, and we don't have a bunch of time, because Ecclesiastes is such a wonderful, great text. So those little books, I don't think I have more inside, so we'll just have to share. And if I could have the one with the stickers in it. Thank you. My little notes.
Pre-mark. Yeah.
Well, it's just the pages, yeah. So, but let's do the blessing. I'm sorry, let's do the blessing after the Torah, because this is really the Haftorah.
Okay, give me a second. I gotta switch slide decks.
Problem, sorry. Thank you.
Is the blessing in?
The blessing after the Torah reading?
Is it in?
Yeah. Yep, it is in here. Oh yeah, you can just throw that in the garden because it's smell yucky. You can go through.
No, it's just that I don't.
Page 69. Still on Torah, etc.
Here it is. It's right on the screen. Page 69 in the prayer book.
Thank you.
Yeah, the bottom after reading the Torah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'hayei olam nata betocheinu ruach hashechina notenet haTorah. Amen. Okay. So now we will read Ecclesiastes. So the book of Ecclesiastes is said to have been written by King Solomon, who had many, many wives and a lot of possessions. So just to give you a little perspective as you read this. And we won't have time to read it all, but we'll just start to read through it. And I like when people are like, but wait, this is giving me pause. So if it's giving you pause, say so. For folks online too, unmute and say, wait, this is giving me pause. And we'll pause and discuss. That's what Torah study is, which is what I love about it. And it's going to be on the screen in a minute or two. And so if the reading that you're hearing from us here doesn't match exactly the reading on the screen, it's because there's many different translations. And so we have a book that may not translate exactly as it translates for you on the screen. So, and I'm wondering if someone on somebody online would like to read now.
I will.
Thank you.
Okay.
But you just, there you go.
Okay. The words of Kohelet, son of David, king in Jerusalem. Utter futility, said Kohelet. Utter futility. All is futile. What real value is there for a man in all the gains he makes beneath the sun? One generation goes, another comes, but the earth remains the same forever. The sun rises and the sun sets and glides back to where it rises. Southward blowing, turning northward, ever turning blows the wind. On its rounds the wind returns. All streams flow into the sea, yet the sea is never full. To the place from which they flow, the streams flow back again. All such things are wearisome. No man can ever state them. The eye never has enough of seeing, nor the ear enough of hearing. Only that shall happen which has happened. Only that occur which has occurred. There is nothing new beneath the sun. Sometimes there is a phenomena of which they say, look, this one is new. It occurred long since in ages that went by before us. The earlier ones are not remembered. So too those that will occur later will no more be remembered than those that will occur at the very end.
So I'm going to just one second, Jacqueline.
Sure.
So, right, this is basically saying, the way I think about it is like, everything's just going to fall through our fingers, right? Like those that we think of as so important, this is a prayer that we actually say on Friday night, but this is essentially what he's saying here, right? Like those who think they're so important, think they're so famous, they're not going to be remembered. And it's, to me, it's a really interesting question. Like, what, if we want to leave a legacy, if we want to do something important in this world and impact the future generations in positive ways, right? Like, how do we do that? Is that about our name? Or is it about our, like, could you be anonymous and impact future generations in positive ways? And
Yes.
what would that be like, right? Like, it's not always those with big names, even if they're doing good work in the world, right? There's so many unnamed people, right? The millions of people marching. So I love that. Like, don't think of yourself as so important, because it's just like, it's futile. You're nobody.
Well, I got hung up a few paragraphs further up, where if you can scroll back, is it possible to scroll?
Yeah, can you scroll up a little bit?
Or maybe you want the book.
Do you want the book?
Yeah, maybe.
Are we in this book?
We're right in the page 57. We're right in
57.
sorry. 69 was in the prayer book. We're in 57.
Yeah, it's all streams flow into the sea, and the sea is never full. To the place from which they flow, the streams flow back again. Well, maybe. My sister lives in Asheville, North Carolina. So the streams were a little different a few weeks ago.
Right.
Put it together for this.
Well, I mean, maybe the difference is like, this is how the natural order of the works, but we've messed it up. So now the streams are not this, the natural flow of things are not naturally flowing in the way that they should be, because we've made such a disaster of it.
Well, and you can argue either way about climate change, but what she tells me is that they've, I don't know how much of an effect this had on what happened, but it certainly has to do with the cleanup, that they've let the water infrastructure go for decades because nobody was paying for repairs. So, and whether that would have made a difference in what happened, I don't know. I haven't asked her yet.
Right. But that's part of the failure of the capitalist system.
Yeah.
Like, it's like Flint, Michigan, right, where they don't care about the water for the people.
Yeah.
Right.
Or
Brazilian.
what is it in Louisiana?
Or
Yeah.
one of the more,
I would,
where you finish?
New Orleans. No, I'm finished with it.
One of the more interesting classes I took in my undergraduate education was about ecofeminism, and to very overgeneralize about gender, the masculinizing of the economy makes it productive instead of reproductive. And I see this a little bit with Solomon being like, it's not fair that the sea can't be full. Why can't it just be done? And I see that with how we've built our infrastructure and our economy. Everything always has to be new. There's not a value in things returning to how they were, even though that's how seasons work. That's how the water cycle works. That's how birth and death works. And it's kind of, I think of this as being a phenomenon of the last several hundred years, but clearly, actually, it's at least as old as the book, of Kohelet, and potentially older, that people who maybe have greatness or want greatness are humbled by the cycles rather than being inspired to maintain them.
I was also thinking that it's about us failing in stewardship, right? And stewardship not only for the land itself, but for people in each other, right?
Yeah.
So, and yeah,
Do I see any hands online?
I have a much bigger conversation.
Neil.
Yes, everything that is said, I agree with, and it's coming from a place of expanded consciousness, the interconnectedness of things. But getting back to the text, we know that as we read further in this, Kohelet is talking about all his attempts at greed to be fulfilled, having lots of wives, having stables, having on and on. So the basic social position he's coming from as a entitled consumer of everything, his statements of bitterness about things, saying that no one will be remembered. Yeah, most narcissists feel they're not getting the due they expand, but if someone were part of a social movement, all the writings of Howard Zen, of ordinary people that stood up to inequity, we remember them. Many of us on Hanukkah sing the ballad of Joe Hill. And so it's about your perspective. If you're a ahistorical consumer, you're going to think it's unfair. If you believe in being part of a social movement and things evolving, you're not going to have these complaints.
Thank you, Neil. Interesting. Ari.
Yeah, and that kind of connects to the needs that we have as humans to be individual and then to be independent and interdependent. And this independence taken to the extreme becomes this greed and selfishness. And so some kind of balance has to be reached, I think. And obviously that connects with our relationship and entanglement with the earth and the way, humans have extracted and continue to extract, and driven by the, the economic capitalist system. So it's all has to be changed.
Yeah. I was at the UC Berkeley Sukkot yesterday, but there was no actual Sukkot, but they were still doing teachings. And there was a lecturer from San Francisco speaking about, he's an ecologist and activist, and speaking about the fact that the wall, the apartheid wall, was built to redistribute the waters from the mountains. I never knew that it wasn't just breaking up the lands. It was literally how the water flowed into Gaza and into West Bank. And it was built to actually, so that Israel could control how that water was flowed. So the aquifers would not be filled.
Wow.
I know, I was just like, wait a minute, I wish I recorded that.
Yeah.
So that was kind of mind blowing. It doesn't surprise me at all when you know, like, we invaded Afghanistan for a pipeline and all these things, like, you know it, but if you don't actually,
It's consistent.
it's totally consistent and
Yeah.
not surprising, but I did not know that. It was very interesting. And so people in Palestinian lands, after the wall was built, their lands were flooding or were not getting the water. They couldn't access water. So it's all another form of what he called ecocide, right? Controlling of the environment. And he also spoke about it in terms of feminist ecofeminism.
Yeah.
So, yeah. All right. So let's see, it's 5 to 12. We can continue to read this over lunch together if you want, but let's read a little bit more.
Okay. So I, Kohelet, was king in Jerusalem over Israel. I set my mind to study and to probe with wisdom all that happens under the sun. An unhappy business that, which God gave men to be concerned with. I observed all the happenings beneath the sun, and I found that all is futile and pursuit of wind. A twisted thing that cannot be made straight, a lack that cannot be made good. I said to myself, here I have grown richer and wiser than any that ruled before me over Jerusalem, and my mind has zealously absorbed wisdom and learning. And so I set my mind to appraise wisdom and to appraise madness and folly. And I learned that this too was pursuit of wind. For as wisdom grows, vexation grows. To increase learning is to increase heartache.
Okay, pause. A couple things come up for me here. First of all, like, this is like, I don't know, it sounds kind of depressed, but kind of like really at a loss, like really in a lot of pain and heartache. But as I'm reading it and thinking about his place of power in society, and assuming that people are going to read what he's writing, it's interesting to me because I almost hear it as like the people in power saying, don't think you can change anything. Don't engage in social movements. Don't try to challenge the status quo because it's all folly. It's all futile. There's nothing, it's pursuit of wind. And I never read it that way before until just now when you were reading it. And I thought, oh, that's an interesting way to think about this, that like, really, here's this person of power saying, don't try to challenge the power structure. It's just another king basically saying the social structure of society is part of the structure of the universe itself, and it's set and it's fixed and it cannot change. But actually, Exodus in Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh comes to tell us, no, you can completely blow up and overturn the social systems and structures of society. And when you start to do that, let's say plagues or miracles, crazy things happen. In the universe itself, crazy things happen. And societies and systems of structure can be overturned, and we are to engage in that. And then we don't know what will happen in the universe. So that's how I just read that for the first time. Everything that way. Ari.
Yeah, I mean, I interpret it that way too, but I'm wondering, you know, the word ruach is also spirit, of a person's spirit. It's not just wind. How did they get to this interpretation? I guess if you look at it broadly, this is the only interpretation you could have is wind, but it is also spirit. It's another word for nefesh, ruach, breath, soul, etc. Anyway, that's all.
Yeah. This too was pursuit of wind. Yeah. Okay, I think we will end there. Like I said, we can continue to read this over lunch if we want. It's so rich.